Hello, my name is Karim Moukhadder, and today I'm going to be presenting the concept of fragmentation as anticipation. This concept is applied in my project through the A2 model that I have constructed, as well as the A1 model depicting the dwelling or DJ booth. Start off, in reference to my quote, rather than understanding fragments as remnants of something broken, I approach them as elements oriented toward a future system, spaces that suggest connection without fully resolving it. Following, this shift transforms fragmentation from loss into potential, where incompletion becomes a generative condition, amplifying the future tense of promise that it brings with it. As I discussed in the previous slides, um, fragmentation is not about what is missing, but about what is yet to come. The fragment exists in a future-oriented state, carrying the potential of a system that has not formed. This creates a condition of anticipation, where space is experienced through tension, delay, expectation, rather than completion. And that appears through the spatial tension between fragments that I've created in my model between the two entities that are separated by fragments that initially appear as barriers but actually orient the structures toward one another. Fragmentation to anticipation. Fragmentation initially produces separation, but anticipation transforms that separation into spatial tension. In my work, I explored how fragments can be translated from states of multiplicity and plurality into a state of singularity, and that is done through the notion of anticipation. An example of the following is the intervals that are found between my elements in uh, my model. These intervals become the most important spaces. The gaps hold movement, create suspense, and prevent immediate resolution. As a result, space is not static, it is always becoming, always suggesting something that has not arrived. Thus, this strengthens my idea of how fragments are translated from multiplicity into singularity, because they form one entity that is yet to become but is in the process of becoming. Model development through implementing the notion of anticipation. The model began with two opposing entities, initially separate. Fragments were then extracted, merged, and redistributed. Instead of resolving into one object, the system remained open and rational, breaking the initial obstacle of separation between the fragments. Through the following diagram, we can see how the fragments that were merged into one another initially broke that sense of separation, creating tension nodes within the model and within the spaces and the overall structure. Through the text and establishing the notion of anticipation, I was then able to break down what the fragmented elements on my model meant or represented, whereas intermediary fragments were introduced as tension points rather than simple dividers between the opposing entities on either side of the model. Spatial gaps function as points of suspense, waiting for the entities to clash or meet. Tension is maintained structurally, spatially, whether internally in the opposing entities due to the merge among the gray and white pieces, or externally and spatially through the fragmented pieces placed between both structures. After understanding the notion of anticipation fully, I was able to understand anticipation through fragmentation and define it onto my model, whereas the red areas mark tension points that I formed in my model and how these spatial gaps and the spatial play overall um, is full of suspended fragments and fragments and entities awaiting their clash or eventual meeting, also reinforcing the idea of how fragmentation is being transformed from an incomplete state to a state of becoming, as I mentioned in my previous slide. picked further angles of my model, highlighting how my entities are on either side of the board, separated by the intermediary pieces that I talked about, and how the spatial play is seen from all angles. Establishing my notion of anticipation, I was able to specify my spatial condition, and that is spatial suspension. As a result, the spatial system exists in a condition of suspense between connection and separation, where thresholds, movement, and form remain open, continuous, and unresolved. Following our construction of the A2 model, we had a site visit to Sanaya area, the area that this concept will be implemented in. The area revealed a layered system where thresholds and barriers and permissions all flow together and work in different ways. The area consisted of calm zones and congested zones. It also gave us insight on the idea of presence versus absence and memory versus inactivity in certain buildings, such as the Arida building and Radio Le Bon, uh, that were present on the site. Through the interesting insights and interpretations that we got in our site visit, I was able to construct the following photo montage that depicts Beirut as a layered system, whereas we have the buildings of Najjar and Arida on one side, and we have the interior of Arida on another side, also depicting the connection between presence and absence and the activity that some areas in Sanaya area face. Moving on, we were then instructed to conduct a site survey that was based on a research question that asked us to explore thresholds, permissions, barriers, and determine what can be known, accessed, or experienced in the city. Through that, we were able to experience Sanaya area once again, exploring buildings such as Najjar, Arida, and the Sanaya Garden. Um, Through the site survey that we conducted, I was able to pick Arida building as a background guide for my design proposal to come. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the specific part from the site survey that piqued my interest was Arida building, so I chose to insert this diagram of the building into my presentation to kind of give the same feel and observations that we felt when we were on the site as a group and that I felt personally. I depicted the views of the building itself because part of it is located on Spear Street while the backside of it is located on Dunon Street, as well as highlighting the access point that the building has that play a role in my configuration of the dwelling and DJ booth later on. These are also a few interesting shots that I got from inside the Varida building and I thought could give insight to how I was able to play on that interior and later on, as I mentioned, get my model and insert it into the building itself. Following the specific site survey that we conducted, I was then able to explore and discover more facts about the site itself, history and stories, spatial issues that emerge, architectural opportunities, and much more. So I was able to explore and see how the building lies on a corner site that basically define the entire construction and architecture of the building. Some of these spatial issues that emerged were its location being located on a very congested street such as Spear Street, and other architectural opportunities that also piqued my interest were the commercial shops located on Spear Street that have the ability to be revived, reviving the entire area itself as well as the economical situation in Lebanon. Following the site survey, we then conducted a in-depth site analysis of Sanaya area. This specific diagram represents all of the streets present, Sanaya Garden, the buildings that we were specifically asked to explore, El Saad Villa, and much more. Following the overview that I was able to construct on the diagram in the previous slide, I was then able to mark the specific area of intervention where my dwelling and where DJ booth is going to take place, and that is going to be on Arida building. I also was able to annotate the access points because we have two access points, one located on Speed Street while the other is located on Dunon Street, and so on. Following the annotations that I conducted on the class model that we constructed, I used the specific map to create a more in-depth site analysis. Through this map, I was able to establish elevations in the area on tracing paper, as well as other factors that I will talk about. So I established elevations, I established traffic flow, I established street directions, a general overview of the area, a diagram um, depicting sun orientation, humidity levels, temperatures, and much more. Following the diagrams and the maps that we were asked to do, we were then instructed to create the sequential sectional movement diagrams that represent our vision and how the area can be sectioned and seen, and also strengthen the concept of how I saw personally Sanaya area as a layered system. And so I constructed the section based on observations that I saw. Moving on onto the design hypothesis and plot 20, which is also known as the dwelling or the J. In this specific area, I propose a DJ booth, VJ booth, located in Sanaya area on Aida building, on which fragmentation is used to construct a suspended and layered spatial condition. The proposal breaks the booth includes program into planar fragments that form separated rooms and platforms organized through parallel relationships and controlled disjunction. These fragments are connected through ramps and shifting levels, translating the A2 model's logic of delay and suspended connection into built form. The interval between fragments become active thresholds of movement and transition. Movement through the space creates a sequential experience of anticipation and partial revelation. Fragmentation here is not a sign of incompleteness, it is a generator of suspense, layering, and spatial anticipation. Here are a few solo shots of the model that I created, labeled to what each room and the functionality that it has behind. The construction of the model itself, we were then asked to insert our model into our building of choice. As I mentioned before, I picked Arida building due to its interesting structure and how I thought the model would integrate clearly into it. These are some photos depicting the measurements that I followed, as well as the area surrounding the building, showcasing Dunon Street, Spear Street, the shops, the translucent or transparent speed I added on the top of the building, and the functionality behind it that I will discuss in further slides. Forward, we then discussed characteristics that best described our insert of our models into our buildings of choice, into Arida in this case. So, structure, relationship, and load pressure. My insert had distributed pressure points and heavy insertion. That was followed by the intervention that penetrated both the front and back facades, creating a continuous spatial cut that links exterior and interior through a direct, intrusive insertion. The threshold condition that my model followed was that my model had an entry from inside of Arida building. The visual relationship. So basically, my model contrasts with the host geometry. The intervention contrasts with the host geometry, resulting its order through a misaligned intersection that disrupts the facade and asserts its own spatial logic. Programmatic extension introduces a new function to the facade. The intervention introduces a new function to the facade, transforming it into an active, occupiable DJ booth that extends program beyond the building envelope. Further on, we were then asked to discuss the environmental agency. So, in my case, the intervention or the environmental agency that my insert introduced to Harita building and to the area itself was the transparent piece that I added on top of my model, which served as a transparent solar panel. The following transparent solar panel um, are basically see-through photovoltaic technologies that generate electricity by absorbing ultraviolet and infrared light while allowing visible light to pass through. That also created a area in the model where the specific artist of my choice would be able to explore the light in the day, and the glass would also function as um, a glazed and the glass would also have a glazed feature that would protect the artist from sun or rain when it is unwanted. In the following slide, I included a video that depicted my model on the Balsa 6, a 360 view. These are more pictures depicting how the Balsa sticks worked onto the model. In this video, I depicted the kinetic movement that I inserted into the model. Following this was the final photo montage or the second photo montage that we were asked to do of our model plugged into Arido. Thank you for listening.